Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Podcast. This is the back of the bus session. Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. I'm buzzing today because I've got my mate on here. Is a facilitator at the farm. Is just a bloody lovely human. So welcome aboard, Nick Edgar.
Crowd goes wild.
Mate, well, you don't go by highly sensitive coach anymore, right?
That is correct, mate.
It's Nick Edgar from
the 3E space.
the 3 space.
Yeah.
And is it spelt like 3 or
The number 3.
Yeah, so you spell 3.
I can see Dan now as we're talking because he always reminds everyone on the radio that it's the number 3.
It is the number 3.
Yeah, so it's the
3 number
E space.
Yeah.
That's it. Simple.
How? Where did that come from? Why the 3E space?
To be honest, Jess came up with it. I can't take credit for it. Jess is my life and business partner.
She's been on the podcast with you.
She has.
Episode 124, about over a year ago now.
That is a cracking memory.
Yeah, and then you were episode 135, I believe.
There we go, mate.
Yeah, so not long after, but yeah, she's a wonderful human, Jess. So
She's
if you're
amazing.
Watching, Jess, we love you. You're wonderful.
She'll definitely be watching.
Yeah.
I hope.
So she was the brains of the name.
Brains of the name. So the 3 E's literally are what we bring to everything, our personal lives, our philosophy, just very simply to explore, to energize, and to empower.
Mm.
And I think if we bring that curiosity and that energy kind of...
In that order.
What we do. In that order, generally.
Explore, energize, empower. Yeah,
Empower.
I love that. I really love that. Was that a meeting that you had together where you were sort of just throwing around, we need this, this and that? Or how did it come about?
So we'd both... By then, Jess had been in business for 2 years as a sole trader. I'd been in business for a year as a sole trader. But increasingly, though we have our own clients and continue to have our own coaching clients and do our own work, we do a lot together now. And it just felt like, for all sorts of reasons, okay, this is what we're going to do for the rest of our life. Let's get serious about it.
Beautiful.
You know, but with a big smile on our face at the same time. You can only be so serious, can't you?
So you've got that as a business that you do as an entity together.
Yes.
And then you've got your own on the side.
No.
That,
literally
it's
everything
all
comes
in
under that umbrella now.
That umbrella.
Look, the big picture, like dream, if you like, is that at some point in the future we will quite literally have a space.
Amazing. That is the dream.
Yeah, which will cover everything from, because it isn't just coaching we do now. Since we last spoke on here, we've trained in breath work.
Yeah,
we do a lot of that, which we can get into in a bit.
Cool. I've been to that session with you. That was beautiful. Yeah,
man,
thought it was a cult
stuff.
for a start. Just no, it was an amazing day.
Well, a lot of people do because they just go like, "You breathe? What do you mean?" Like, it's just
I mean, obviously it's become popularised now, but was it a known thing for a long time and it's just been taken and
been
put
around
into...
for thousands
really
years. Yeah.
How did it get popularised then? Do you know?
For me, I'd probably say Wim Hof.
Yeah, of course. What a great human.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever met him live? Have you seen him in human?
No.
He's,
Not in human
He
form.
is what he is.
Have you seen him then?
Yeah, I went to
amazing.
that Russell Brand community festival.
Righto.
That about a year ago now as well. We did a boo-boo there because I really wanted to go and immerse myself in it, learn from all these speakers, but we took both the kids with us. So really for the whole 3 days we just stayed in the kids area.
Had a different sort of immersive experience.
It was a different, because also we were like doing tag team, me and Chrissy, and I was like, okay, you go and watch that one, you go and watch that one, but then inevitably within half an hour the kids didn't want to be with that one person. So we had to say, could you come back? And it was just like, do you know what? Let's accept that we did poorly here and enjoy this for what it is. And let's make it a family thing. But next time we go for anything, an event like that, we're going to try and just take ourselves so we can both be in it together.
Love that.
But yeah, Wim was there and that was a nice moment. Just went and watched him and he was doing this
Did his movement.
Yeah, movement, dance. Is it ecstatic dance as well? Was there? And
Yeah, absolutely.
It was lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't get to do it to its core, to its fullest. But yeah, you think Wim Hof was kind of the person to bring it into the zeitgeist?
Yeah, I think so. But it's becoming more and more popular online, certainly. But I think I think probably because we're in a post-pandemic world at the minute, and we don't quite know how things are going to play out, even still. And I think people are looking for different kinds of support and different approaches to well-being over and above those kind of more traditional eat well, exercise, so
Completely.
I think how we exercise and how we move is really important, and understanding ourselves. This isn't a word I'd have even spoken when we last met, but that understanding ourselves somatically, and by that word somatically I mean, how do we function and how can we support us functioning in a way which is healthy, and importantly, that's different for everyone, I believe.
I completely agree with you. Has there been an influx in people coming to work with you too since the last podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've
Which is
both
brilliant
evolved,
to
because
hear. Wow.
we were talking about high sensitivity, which me and Jess both are, and so I don't want to spend too much time talking about that. But that was kind of the thing in the early days, that we just felt this is something where we can put a flag up in the air and say this is who we are, and draw in people that are highly sensitive. But what we've discovered since then is my real passion, in a coaching sense, has evolved into people pleasing.
Okay.
So because I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah.
So
guilty.
And I think one of the many things that I think we have in common is we're trying to be, if not consciously all the time, the kind of person that we needed when we were younger.
Yeah. Adage, isn't it? An adage.
Yeah. Love that. So as you continue to kind of do personal development, healing, growth, whatever word is meaningful to you, you learn things about yourself, and then you think, oh man, I need to kind of find a way to incorporate that and put that back out into the world. So that's really the kind of, again, that exploring, energizing, the empowerment side is what's drawing people in. And I think we can talk about people pleasing and what it means and what sits behind that happily, because I think it's really important to understand. I knew I'd say nuance on this.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Can we please get a tattoo together?
Do you know what I mean?
That's our magic word. We need a moment when that word's said in this podcast to just press a buzzer.
Oh, mate.
Nuance, yeah.
I'm here for that, mate. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I want to go down the path of people pleasing. It's an interesting word. Just something that I was thinking about as you were talking, and post-pandemic world, and also, we're going into uncertain territory now and uncomfortable territory. I don't watch the news at all anymore. I'm completely out of mainstream, but I'd just like to talk to you a bit about that. Do you think that's a wise position to put yourself in, to just completely cancel out the noise and the chatter and what's going on? Or do you think that's potentially leaving people in a vulnerable and naive position in life? Because I think that's sort of something that people balance between.
Well, look, I'll talk from my own personal experience as far as that goes, and it's a great example actually of what I meant when I said getting to know yourself somatically and emotionally, and what you're capable of subjecting yourself to. And I think when it comes to the news, subjecting yourself is probably the right expression for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel a lot of fear-based emotions when I watch the news.
Same.
And I have to be careful that if I'm soaking all of that in, that it doesn't then spill out into other areas of my life.
Yeah.
And before I know it, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling concerned, I'm
Definitely
viewing...
not energized.
No, well, exactly, you know. So I think for me, there is a balance to be struck between understanding what's happening, not just in your own life, in your own community, in this area, in this country, in the world. Like, there's room for it all. And I think cutting yourself off completely all the time probably isn't ideal, like forever. But taking a break, I think, is extremely healthy. and then but I think it's about being in tune with where your energy is.
And I suppose potentially, if you want to dip your toes in, finding a source that you're comfortable in receiving it from.
Well, and bringing a spirit of curiosity. And this is for everything with me. So, or a healthy cynicism. Just not to accept that what's put in front of you is the truth and the whole truth.
Yeah, because then you can be on a team quite quickly then, can't you?
I think so. And truth isn't an absolute thing. I believe. I think it's very subjective.
Yeah.
So for me, if you've only got, if you were to look at all 20 or however many newspapers that there are today, or go online and look at coverage of the same event, it's all spoken in a different way because you have the perspective of the person writing the article and everything that sits behind that as well.
Propaganda and agendas they may want to fill, may not.
Yeah, look, 100%. And I think but again, it's just that help. I think there's room for everything. Yeah, but it's being careful to not give away your power to somebody else, and to take as gospel that what you're being presented with is absolute.
It's that path of self-discovery, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think for me, social media is often kind of vilified because of how triggering it can be and the behaviours that come because of that. But I think what it also offers is an opportunity to teach ourselves about who we are. So every time we get triggered, I get triggered, that's an opportunity for me to ask myself what's going on within me, not to
put it on
all of that on what the thing is that's triggering me, and what my ego and other parts of me will want to do is to probably do exactly that.
Do you have any good examples of that? Have you got any moments in life where you felt particularly a triggered response, and either a side of yourself decided to cut it off at the source, or you searched inside yourself and said, well, actually, it's envy that I'm feeling here, which is a beautiful thing rather than jealousy, and I'm going to run with that, or just something in that realm?
All the time, to be honest, because we're complex beings. So, even this week, with kind of every time I particularly watch anything that happens in the Houses of Parliament, I generally get triggered. Yeah. Because there's a game going on there, and language and themes and people are used in such a way as to score points. So that as a behaviour, I find inauthentic and triggering as a result, because in that environment, you're setting the tone for the nation. I believe. So I feel that every time I watch either Richie Sunak or Keir Starmer or any other politician, almost to a T, there's one or two that I quite like listening to, like one of our local ones, Nadia Whittam, I really like listening to. Yeah. But ultimately,
I used to feel it in Corbyn. I was always a bit that's a real great human talking on the mic. Yeah. Thank God. Where've they been?
Yeah, showing my age, but Tony Benn was one for me.
Okay.
And I think you can still be human and have a reasoned discussion, and even an argument. You can do that healthily. But for me, that trigger of okay, why am I feeling triggered? Well, I'm feeling triggered because I'm watching some inauthenticity, and what does that make me feel? I feel angry that the leaders of our country, the politicians, choose to engage with each other and these topics in this way. I've always felt that way. It's a known trigger for me. So I have to be careful that I don't let that sink in.
The reason I love you and Jess is because I feel that authenticity. Where you were putting it to politics, you can see it in the spiritual world quite a lot, can't you? It's up to the T what you were talking about. I was just thinking of it in that realm, and then I was feeling, why does it irritate me so much? And I suppose it is because there's vulnerable people being played with there, in a way, and trying to make yourself look like this cult leader or whatever it can be. Yeah. When I've seen it happen, it does get a part of my soul or psyche or down in my gut where I'm going, that's not right. That's not fair.
No, it's not. And I think coaching and wellness as a whole is largely unregulated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think what it does mean is that anybody can just throw their hat into the arena and pretty much say anything. So I think there's two key phrases that have become really meaningful to me in that industry that I look out for and feel triggered when I see. One of them is when I get a sense that somebody is speaking or producing content or putting themselves out there from a position of being falsely empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And falsely empowered for me tends to be, there's a struggle, I learn something or I have an experience and now I feel I'm an expert.
Yeah. And I've been there.
Yeah, me too. 100%. I've been falsely empowered like, at times. So I'm not removing myself from that.
I get you.
And in fact, it's because I have felt like that at times that I recognise it, I think.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of that in the space that I'm in.
It's like there's that sort of saying, there's a difference between learning and wisdom. And I think my learning there was a sense of, I want to help everybody. And then very naively, but with good intention, I was going around and saying, it's this thing, it's this thing,
Yes.
it's this thing. And then down the line, when I realised, oh, everyone's different, context is key, they're a completely different human with the emotions and experience. The real wisdom is, let's tune into and plug in where you're at, and maybe we can find your solution together, sort of thing.
Look, I completely agree. And I think this is on that theme again. A lot of the wellness is like, here's this thing, and if you follow me to this place and do this thing, you can have this as well. That's the narrative, that's the story, that's the selling point. For me, what that does is it doesn't meet people where they are. It asks you to move from where you are to somewhere that might be completely alien in order to get benefit. So what that does for me is that doesn't allow for exploration. It doesn't allow for energizing or empowering. What that is disempowering and creates distance and disconnection for me. And actually that can really prod wounds of lack of self-worth, of trauma, of all sorts of things, and that feeling of I'm not good enough.
Which is what you believe it all sort of stems from.
Well, I think so. I think ultimately,
disarray.
But I think it's part of the human condition is that we don't feel good enough. So, and this is the problem with the second thing. There's the false empowered bit, but the second thing for me in this space is spiritual bypassing. And it's to ignore all of that, and it's to almost say, no, that's not true, just high vibes, man, all the time, like no negative energy, like this is the way to kind of wellness. And it's like, no, look, what you're doing then is you're taking a slice out of all of the emotions and experiences available to us, and that most of them have settings where they're appropriate. So if you're in that kind of like, you must always be positive, you must always be high vibe and no negativity and all that kind of thing, like what are you going to do when you encounter grief and loss, which is part of the human experience that we all deal with? Like, how do you factor that into your model of the world? So I think there's something there about, like, for me, accepting that you can take good bits from both of those things. 100%. There is good in there, and I don't doubt for a minute that the vast majority of people that operate from those positions are doing so with good intentions, as you say. But I think it doesn't lead to a phrase that I like to use myself, is kind of sustainable change. And sustainable change is understanding that we can't be permanently anything. We're always evolving, we're always changing. We're sometimes going to have better days than others, all of us. That is just being human. So for me, it's about what tools can you learn, what ways of being can you learn, what environments can you spend time in, and what kind of people are going to allow you to kind of grow and ride that wave more successfully, and not get like knocked off your surfboard all the time.
Crashing into the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been. You mentioned a really interesting and confusing emotion, grief. Because all the other emotions, or a lot of emotions I can think of, anger it sort of helped us stand up for ourselves. And fear, we ran away from the saber-toothed tiger. And I could keep going on. Like loneliness, it made us join our communities and so on, and get involved with people, which has helped us thrive and survive to where we are now.
Yeah.
Grief, what's the help within grief? Because it seems a strange emotion to get through and process, and everyone goes in their own paces. But
I hear you. I think the first thing I would personally say is grief isn't just tied to bereavement.
Yeah, completely. I've felt it when we couldn't work here. I remember trying to sort out another space before, and creating such a space here that I felt safe in, and then having it snatched away. I really went through a grieving process that I think I'm still processing now through. So yeah, completely agree.
I love that. And that's a great example of where grief is an appropriate emotion to feel. It's tied up with loss for me. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be something that we have had in order to feel that loss. It could be something that we hoped for that never comes to pass.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, the value of feeling grief is to do with meaning.
Oh, yeah.
So
I know that's real because it made me feel very emotional when you said it. So I was like, oh, yeah. That's a good answer. Meaning.
Yeah. So when we have meaning...
Sorry, that's lovely.
Yeah.
That's your... Mate, you got your snippet. Yeah. I knew you'd get your snippet at some point.
Snippet in 20 seconds.
Definitely for me. Oh, yeah, okay. That's beautiful. So we're talking about the 3E space, and you're working with so many different people now.
Yes.
Some of it's mentoring, where you're having conversations like you just had them with me, and people have them epiphanies and they're like, oh, my life. Do you make sure you have, if they want to, community spaces where you bring in those people together? Yeah. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So as well as our one-to-one coaching, Jess has a group program which is specifically aimed at kind of collective processing of being a child of, or someone that's been affected by another person's drinking.
Yeah,
which is massive.
And she spoke quite heavily of that on the last podcast we did a year
from
ago.
her own story. But again, she's moved away from high sensitivity into that arena now.
Awesome.
And she supports a charity as well called NACOA, the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. I've just launched a men's space online called the Sunday Space, which is just a chance for men to get together.
What time's that? Because I want it in. What time are you kicking off?
7:30
at night.
And it's the last Sunday of every month.
Okay.
And it's really just a chance to get together, to share what's going on for us, and just to be witnessed in our truth, not to fix, offer advice, coach, anything like that. It's just about being witnessed, because I believe there's a real power in that. There's a real connective power in just sharing what's going on for you. It doesn't even matter what it is, but just being authentic and being witnessed in that. And I think you can go away from those spaces then feeling that connection.
Have you been in any spaces where you've learned from that and you saw people trying to fix and you thought, oh, this is kind of dangerous right now?
Yeah, and I think this is why you used the word mentor earlier. And actually, in this sense, like, I'm really careful where I use the word mentor, because mentor puts yourself in a position of leadership.
I hear you. Yeah. Okay,
and sometimes that's appropriate. So the work I do on the farm with the kids here, I would say part of that is a mentoring role.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of coaching and in terms of these spaces, I don't see it as that. There are lots of spaces that offer sharing where there is a leader who will position themselves as such. We've been in one or two ourselves. And that's okay. I'm not saying that's not without value, but for me, I don't sit particularly comfortably with that.
Can you go into that a little bit, or could you dive
Yeah, because I'm an imperfect human being.
Yeah.
And I don't know everything. And my experience of being in those spaces with someone that positions themselves as that is that they're very rarely vulnerable because of that. Not in a way that I feel they're being authentically vulnerable. They might be being authentically vulnerable. I can't say they're not. But for me, I just sense something that tells me you're playing a role of being a leader. There's probably definitely some authenticity in there, but it's like I'm in this space. Like I need to be a certain character. Exactly that. And maybe that's inevitable to a certain extent. Just as I know that when I'm working here with the kids, there's a certain character that I may wear on top of my authenticity, and I can do both of those successfully. So I think it's a bit horses.
But there's an awareness to it.
There's an awareness
I think there.
That's
You're like,
it.
this warrants this character coming out, and it actually works in this environment. But you know who you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I've been in situations and met people where I thought, I don't know if they're aware to it, and that makes me feel uncomfortable because lack of awareness can lead people down strange paths.
I think when you start presenting and leading from a position of I'm right, this is the way.
Yeah,
I think it's a dangerous road. Yeah,
and I go very much the other. It was me, my whole story, sort of mainstream education or wherever it is. This is how we do it. I just had that curiosity of, but maybe there is another way. Yeah,
and there's countless, dozens of ways. The question is what's the right way for you?
Yeah, and that's what coaching is more so.
For me,
figuring out process together where you're on a neutral platform.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because it's like I will walk with you for part of this journey, and I will kind of be a mirror.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll reflect things back to you that you can decide if it's important or not. But it's not me offering my opinion about the things that you've said. It's reflecting back stuff to allow you to re-explore what you've just shared. You know, that's in essence is what coaching is. So then that's where the empowerment
is. It's a balance of like sort of the counselling.
For me it is,
Yeah, counselling this side and that. Oh, here they go. Move you around. There you are. The counselling side and the coaching. No, it's life coaches there are now and stuff. There's just something.
And just
amalgamated.
And again, I think there's like, if you imagine two circles, I think it's like a Venn diagram.
Yes.
There are bits of overlap. I started training as a person-centered counsellor because I understand the value, having been in those rooms as a client, that there's power in being seen and witnessed, like we just spoke about. I take that and the training I have had in that arena into what I do. Yeah,
because I've been in those rooms before where you're sort of going into all your trauma, you're going into the backlog, and it's very uncomfortable and dark, and then it's session over and you go, okay, I'll see you next week and we'll process that again. I've got a whole week into like confront that again, and now I'm at home and I'm alone. So
and this is the thing. So like when as a younger man, when I didn't speak my truth to anybody, going into that room was really empowering for the first time with the first therapist I had. But then what I came to realise was that it no longer was empowering because of exactly that. Because what would happen is that I would then go into that room and give an edited version of what was going on for me. It wasn't real. I wasn't bringing the emotions to what it was. And because I'm a people pleaser, I was also saying the things that I thought would make the therapist think I was making progress. So who wins from that?
The therapist.
My people pleasing part walks away thinking, that was a great session for me, and they're going to think they're great.
Yeah.
What an idiot.
Oh, that's so funny, man. And again, polar to that, the other way where it's all just life coaching, not going into that baggage, can also be a bit... Your missteps and you lose a little bit of, but could we unpack that and have a healthy way of processing it now that will go into your life and echo?
Yeah, and I think this is why a phrase that me and Jess have worked really hard over the last year to 18 months is to become firstly trauma aware and probably now trauma informed, so we can bring that approach to the people we're working with. And if someone comes to us and presents something and starts to unpack something maybe for the first time, and it could be something that fits within like ACEs, for example, like adverse childhood experiences or something like that, we have to make an informed decision of whether we feel capable of both holding that and working with that person. So we might signpost them to somebody that is at the very deep therapeutic end to work through that level of it before they think about coming back to coaching.
Yeah, I get you.
But at the same time, being trauma informed also means that a lot of people come to us that have had the experience I just described of some benefit from therapy, certainly. But the problem they're having is in the present and in relation to the future. Because it's not that the trauma remains unworked on or unhealed. And when I say trauma here, by the way, it isn't just for me ACEs.
Yeah.
It's something that happens to us which has an impact.
Yeah.
And
Good way of
actually,
describing it.
I think so. And for me, the pandemic is a trauma that we've all experienced, for example, to greater or lesser degrees. But the real thing that I've learned about becoming more informed about this is it's not about the thing itself. And I think as humans, we tend to think, oh, this happened to them, so it's understandable. Or, well, that doesn't sound that bad. Like, why are they suffering so much? And actually, it's not so much about what happens to us. It's about what we make it mean.
Yeah, I get you. So sort of that your worst day is your worst day.
Mate, absolutely. So last time when we spoke and we were talking a bit about my football story and that rejection, a few rejections in a short space of time through my adolescence and into being a young man meant that I then carried from those traumatic experiences of being rejected a deep narrative that I am unworthy. So what that meant was for the next 15 or 20 years, in personal relationships, friendships, jobs, hobbies even, I would only allow myself to get so successful before I would get panicky and fear rejection.
Sure.
So I'd leave the job or leave the relationship or do whatever to prevent myself from re-experiencing what I'd experienced as a teenager. So I think that limiting belief is at the core of the energizing bit. So the exploring bit of what we do with our clients and in these spaces is let's just talk and see what happens. Let's hold a mirror up. Let's go down, shine a light on this, see what's important. Okay, how is what's important showing up for you? I really struggle to be myself in these situations. Okay, what's the limiting belief behind that? And to try and unearth that, because when we know what that limiting belief is, and the person can say, yeah, I don't know why I believe that, or okay, I can trace it back to X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
But there's no reason for me to feel that now.
And do you feel
we can work with that?
You notice a lot of people undermining their experiences. They'll go through it dead fast. They're like, and this happened, and then you're like, it's probably the gold there. Do you need
100%.
to get them to look back at that, not tell them, oh, you missed that there, but sort of try and navigate it back round so you're like, don't undermine that experience. That's valid to your worth.
The kind of phrase I would probably use would be, when you said this thing, that I'm just wondering if there's something important there that might be worth revisiting.
Yeah, okay, that's cool.
But it's up to them to decide whether they want to go there.
Sure.
It's not on me, because otherwise I'm bringing myself
You're
into
a good
that.
coach, man.
Thanks, mate.
No, but genuinely, I feel that within you. Where do you feel your coaching hit a trajectory where you felt, oh, I feel worthy in this position now? I feel
No, it's a great question, and one I'm really happy to answer honestly and openly. I think continuing to work on myself and my own shit.
Yeah, good words. It's perfect.
Basically, has really supported me to be able to bring those learnings into my work. There's been some specific training, so I've done some training in the internal family systems model, which is what you would call character work.
Yeah,
which has really helped kind of
that
notice
helps.
when people, when people present in a slightly different way. So even in a coaching session, one of those characters may come into play if we deal with a particularly difficult or stressful topic. So one of the common characters might be the comedian. So we're talking about something serious. So we might be close to a breakthrough, and then they'll make a joke to diffuse it and look after themselves. And you have to respect that character. Do you know what I mean? You can't tell it to piss off, or you're not wanted.
Which
right
has
now,
got value at times.
Massive value. It's what has kept them safe.
Yeah.
And safety is everything.
And people that play that character, when I've been to funerals even or whatever,
100%.
I'm so happy they're in that room, because it makes me feel protected then, and we can smile or laugh about something that everyone else has deemed as very dark.
Mate, absolutely. Which is why for me, one of the best things I learned through that training is all of these characters, however they show up within us, or however that makes us change our behaviour out in the world, they all have a positive intention for us.
Sure.
And that's what I love.
Yeah. They're there to help.
Yeah, they are.
Some misguided, and maybe if you're not in a good space in life, they're ones to be looked at and tweaked.
And this is where and we can move quite nicely onto like inner child work and the stuff me and Jess do with Josh, because that's been a real, circling back to the question you asked, which is when did I know I've become worthy and stuff. A lot of that's been through the work with him as well on his Inner You program, and him believing in us and inviting us to help him do his breath works and all that kind of stuff. I think when someone does kind of value you for your potential and allows you to an opportunity to explore that, that's quite special. That's what we try and do here. You know, and that it's one of the reasons I love coming here, because of that. But you can't make people walk through that door at all. But I think for me, it's being in those spaces, being on the radio is another one that's allowed me to think, oh, actually, I'm okay having a conversation. And I'm okay when I don't know something, saying, actually, I don't really know. And that's okay as well. And sometimes I'll trip over my words and I'll use ums and ands and all that kind of stuff, which I'm now putting out in my content because I don't care. I don't need to be perfect.
So
Otherwise, I'm being inauthentic.
Before, did you sort of keep deleting stuff and going back on yourself?
Mate, honestly, the times I've sat in front of my phone thinking, right, I've got 90 seconds to talk. That's my maximum reel length, and I know what I want to talk about. I know I have the knowledge, and honestly, mate, it would be, it'd be like. I'm right today. Fuck, like, do you know what I mean? And like, before you know it, an hour's gone past. And how do I feel? I feel frustrated. I feel unworthy. I feel not good enough. Like all of those things we've been talking, all those limiting beliefs that I've worked so hard to kind of move through, come to the surface again. So it's like, okay, how do I change that? Just press record. Like we're doing here, and have a conversation with someone where I'm in the conversation. That's the best content you can ever get, but it's imperfect, and that's okay.
And I suppose as with this work, there's always a balance to be had, because that definitely, when you feel the polar of I'm not enough, unworthy, and it's really sort of riddling you and preventing you from doing anything, but also wanting the best for yourself and wanting to improve yourself is a different kettle of fish. So it's not bad to, like, I've listened to this back and wished I wouldn't keep saying but I don't beat myself up over it. I just go, okay, next time let's be a bit more present. Let's like have pace between your words and stuff.
And that's the learning. So it's that compassion. And I think cultivating compassion for ourselves, to understand we're imperfect and we're going to make mistakes, and that failure is part of learning, and getting it wrong is often how we learn best. I think opens your worthiness out. And again, shortens the gap between wanting to explore new stuff and to learn and to grow, because all of that stuff that sits in like the shame swamp about people laughing at us is a common one, that people have a limiting belief. I'm not going to put myself out there because I don't want people to laugh about us, or I don't want people to reject me, or whatever it is. We all have those things, but if we can be compassionate when we get to either see ourselves in the example you were saying, or even if one of those situations happens where somebody doesn't like what we say or how we say it, which does happen, like happens to me, you just have to learn to accept that, but be really compassionate and not make it mean something back to that about ourselves that isn't true. And that's the learning for me. That for me, in essence, is what healing really is. It's not sound baths and Reiki, even though those things are great and I love them. You can't just do that stuff and get to a place of growth and healing, I believe. I think you have to allow yourself to be.
They might settle you. They might get you to a point where you can 100%, open yourself up.
100%. But you have to shine a light on the darkness and accept it. That's it. I think you do. And that's a really difficult place to go to and take responsibility for. But also to understand what isn't my responsibility and what never was. And that's why the inner child part of stuff is so important, because the things that happened to us when we were little people are in no way our responsibility. And the experiences we had and what we've made them mean and that we carry into adulthood is massive if you can do that work. And that's the work that Jess and I do with Josh when we're coaches for his Inner You program, which is like an online healing program to reconnect with your inner child. to develop a relationship and begin to reparent them and champion them. When you can learn to do that, suddenly you have this like childlike energy and this wholeness to you that certainly in my case I'd lost for years.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a child anymore. but you've seen me on here now, like, and last week when I just came on and joined in with the Musos and just had a whale of a time, and it was imperfect
playful.
and it didn't exactly.
Yeah.
So reigniting those things. But the last night we did the big breath work, because the breath work's really important with this stuff. So there's some written exercises. We get together in community, talk about the work, talk about our stories. And again, not from a position of fixing, but then do this conscious connected breath work, which is just the most transformational single experience that combines all of that stuff, where you can then just release, absolute floods of tears, or you might be also unlocking joy and happiness that you've felt unsafe about.
It's such a surreal experience to see people go through it even. And I don't really understand the stigma or people poo-pooing it in such a way when someone's in a height of anxiety or rage or whatever, the first thing we say is, breathe. So it's just a standard piece of advice we give. So to have such a backlash towards this, or through my experience of what I've seen of people having a discussion of breath work, whatever, I don't understand where that stigma's come from. So can you go a bit into the breath work and just talk about
100%
the power of what you've seen? Is 100%. It psychedelic?
No, 100%. But I think there is, for me. Let me start again, because there's so much to unpack.
I've thrown a grenade.
No, but it's amazing. It's amazing. Like I want to kind of chest it, do a couple of flick ups, and then start talking before I pull the pin out. Okay, what have I seen in Monday this week? I was in the ministry in London with 70 people, all lying together doing this conscious connected breath work. Conscious connected breath work is in and out through the mouth, where you breathe 80% as deep as you can into your belly. You top it up in the chest, and then you just let the air fall out. And the minute the air's fallen out to a comfortable level, you breathe deep into the belly again. That's the connected part of it. We breathe for 2 songs, then do about 8 minutes, then do a breath hold. You tense your muscles, you let them go. Do another 2 songs, do the same. And then another 2 songs, and then you have a release. And the release might be a scream or a shout or banging your fists or all of that and more. What the breathing pattern does is it takes you purposely into your stress response. But usually when we're in a stress response, it's because of a danger that we perceive that we can make sense of. So the first part of this breath work, when you try it, your conscious mind is going to do everything it can to tell you, I don't want to do this, the music's crap, this guy's voice is annoying, like, why did I come here, I need the loo, whatever. Because it doesn't want you to be in this stress response. If you breathe through that, and especially after the first breath hold, that conscious mind kind of goes to sleep a bit. And things start to happen physically and emotionally in your body. Because all of the things consciously that stop us feeling all of our emotions every minute of the day like a toddler does are there for good reason. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to function as adults and together with others. But at the same time, I think in Western society especially, it's led us to not really feel any of our emotions at all very often. So what we do through this process in that middle section is start to allow things to move around, and things do move around. You will feel sensations. You might get really hot or really cold. You might feel pins and needles. You might feel energy moving around inside you. By the time you get into that third section, you can feel quite high. You might not, and that's okay too. But if you go into it never having done it before, saying, I don't think this will work on me, and I ain't going to scream at the end, no way. I promise you 100%, if you breathe for that 24, 25 minutes, by the end, you absolutely will. And you won't care, because you won't be conscious of any of this. But then in that moment of release, you can literally, you don't understand what it is that you've released in that moment, but it could be, and it has been in my case now that I've done it so many times, grief, anger, resentment, but also that unlocking of joy, happiness, things that we don't think we can really experience as adults.
Do you?
Just briefly. Then it's important that you have time to sit in that when you come back to your normal breathing.
That was my favourite bit of the day, the reflections at the end when everybody had been through it, and you could feel this level of exhaustion, sort of within the room, but total peace, I suppose.
And that's exactly what it is, because everybody is then co-regulated.
Yeah.
And that's when your conscious mind, you've been through something together, so you've got that connectedness, but then you've got people then's conscious mind starts to make sense of their experience, and they start to remember some of the things that did come up for them. Wow. And there's a lot of healing in that. I really believe it.
My thought on that is, say somebody that was reluctant and then went through that experience and released everything and felt either ecstasy, joy, terror in a way, whatever they're going through, because they've not been through that before. Have you noticed people can chase the dragon then as well, and want to keep on pursuing that feeling, and they don't get what they got at the first time of doing it, so then they slope off of it too? I
think, look, we're veering in towards that kind of like habit and addiction, thrill-seeking behaviours. If that is who you are, you'll bring that to breathwork without a doubt.
Okay.
But it doesn't work like that, because your experience is different every time. Sometimes it's really powerful, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
I think, but I've just learned to trust that the experience is what it is. I think, look, and Josh says this far more eloquent than me, and he's been in recovery for 12 years. You know, there's a lot of talk about ayahuasca, for example. Yeah. Now you can use that as a tool to bring intentionality to having a spiritual experience. 100%. I don't doubt that for a second. Mm-hmm. You can also pretend you're doing all of that and just get fucking high.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same with everything. Like, you know, alcohol can be a bonding, fun experience, but it can be incredibly dangerous and destructive. And I think it's the same for anything which takes us out of our natural way of being and feeling. Has the potential for greatness and the potential for absolute disaster.
Yeah. Personally. Even to something as pure as breath work.
But I just feel like I don't. If you are that way inclined, there's far easier ways to meet that need than breath work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought though. That's where I was at. I was like, I can imagine important for some people that they didn't sort of we're breathing, then they get into it and they're like, oh my god, wow.
Everybody has that experience, I think, largely speaking.
Yeah, just imagine the chasing the thrill of that, because the other bits of healing aren't as sexy or as glamorous, and it's often very painful, so they sort of navigate themselves to that. I just want to feel that thing again.
But just to be clear though, that euphoria, if you like, can be painful.
Right, yeah.
Like
I've seen people in floods of
100%. Like, I've been in floods of tears at certain times, and I have unearthed things that I hadn't thought about in a long time.
Sure.
But again, if we're going to do any kind of real healing and growth from these things, or what we've made them mean that have happened to us, then we have to feel it. And this is why, again, what you asked earlier, what's the value of grief? Well, it's about understanding that something was meaningful to us. We have to feel it to know it was meaningful to us. Otherwise, we're just intellectualizing our experience. And I think the other point about what you've been saying about why is this sort of stuff poo-pooed sometimes? And I think this goes for anything that can't be measured scientifically. Yeah. But the Western world has come to rely so much on data and provability that unless you can do that, you can never really truly make it valid. Yeah. But I just think that's a dangerous road to be on, because throughout human history and part of who we are isn't provable, it's experiential.
that's
we get to
probably
decide.
why I put myself in the arena more of the mind and psychology, is because I love that curiosity and that you can't be right. I've never enjoyed objective truth so much, where it's like, this is what it is, that's how that is, it's mathematically or data proven.
Yeah.
And when you go into the arena of the mind, it's the beauty of creativity and having conversation and coaching and working it all out together. I find that's a much more magic path, and that speaks to me on a level. I understand friends that I've got that are very science minded, or this is how it is, and it's quite safe and probably exciting for them to work out stuff in that way. But
I think
just
there's
never
room
spoke my language.
No, same, but there's room for it. But and again, this is why, like,
Dawkins. I'm like, yo, come on, man. Just where's your nuance, lad? Now
exactly,
I've said it.
Mate, exactly. Good lad. Where's the button?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Look, I feel that. I do. I really feel it. But I think that's why one of the first things I do is with clients is say, look, try the 16 personalities test, try the Enneagram, try human design, look at what the way you answer these questions is reflecting back to you. Does that feel like you? Mm-hmm. Most people will take things from those ways of mapping yourself and say, well, I'm a creative person, but I'm in a non-creative job and I'm not happy at work. Well, it doesn't take a genius to work out why not. That's a really simple example.
I get you. Yeah.
But you'd be surprised, because if you're doing a job which gives you safety, enough money to do some of the things you like, you know, maybe even to buy a house if you're really lucky, all that kind of stuff. If it gives you that, and those are your core, part of your core values as well, it may not occur to you that the thing you're doing to give you those things that you value so much is at odds with who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. So I think very often with our values and our needs, understanding that at its core, and then seeing, well, where do these play out in our life and where are they missing, often gives you the keys to unlock where you can make some changes in your life. And that's the power of it. That's the empowerment of it. Because then it's like, okay, it doesn't mean I can necessarily find my dream job in that example I gave straight away, but I can work towards it. How am I going to work towards it? What's the first step? All of this kind of stuff is really what we do in all of these spaces. And that's the empowerment. When somebody finds a key that gives them self-agency over what steps to take next, that's amazing for me.
I envy those people, because I couldn't have been. Do you know, genuinely though, a naive part of myself, a very childish part of myself, because I didn't enjoy the mainstream and a work that I couldn't put any purpose within. It was sort of just turning up and whatnot. But I wanted everyone to feel the same way. So I was like, no, you're not happy though. Surely, like, the world is this and this is the mechanics, and sort of going down on my high horse, but just realising, wow, those people that core values are, I just want to get by, I want my family, just allow them to be too. I do envy that sense that you can just turn up because you know you've got your bigger purpose at play.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a really good example of personal growth, because I mentioned the 16 personalities before. Like 3 of those 16 make up about 40% of the population. And there's a whole range of more creative personality types where literally 1 in 60 or 70 people. And if you're that personality type, how many people are you going to encounter in your life that are like you? How many roles are going to be designed out there? Because people don't think and feel the way you do. Yeah. And I think there's something about about self-awareness and personal development, to be able to hold a truth that, well, I'm like this, but that doesn't make everyone else wrong. It just makes it different and not for me. And I was the same as you. I'd be very judgy about it. Yeah. Like, I'm very like, well,
and compare. I'd be like, well, you should be more like that though. That they've found a way to get through it, so that's how you should be. So there's two ends of this. You can judge people, or you can compare to people and be, I need to be like that. It's not congruent.
I'll tell you a story, which I do laugh about now, but actually there was quite a lot of pain associated with it. Like when I was 26, 27, and at the time I was living in London. I hadn't even begun to like deal with my shit. I'd had a really short-lived, awful marriage. I was drinking a lot, I was taking drugs a lot, and I worked in the travel industry. So I wasn't in a great place anyway. And then 9/11 happened, which really affected the business I was working in. And, you know, the travel business just stopped. And a lot of our clients were from America, and literally within 2 weeks, a third of the workforce had been made redundant. And I felt this was so against my values of like, because they'd all been using words like we're a family up to that point, and not this and all that. And then suddenly it's like, you've lost a load of money, so now fuck off. That really hit my value. That triggered me, like we spoke about at the beginning of this chat. So what did I do with that knowledge? Like, what did I do with that experience, given where I was in that moment, which was carrying everything that had happened to me up to that point, all unresolved, not looking after myself. I literally left my job. I sold a house that back then I was lucky enough to be able to buy with no deposit. Sold it. I went to the bank. I closed my bank accounts and walked out with whatever cash I had. Because I didn't want anything to do with what I perceived to be a fucked up society. But I was so angry about it and carrying all my own trauma. Who wins from those actions? Like, do you know, when I look now, I have nothing but compassion for like the me of 26 that was so upset with the world and so like, just couldn't understand it. But I also couldn't understand the world from any perspective other than my own.
Yeah.
So over the last 25 years since then, I'd like to think a lot's changed.
Yeah.
You know? And I think we can... I still can't believe I even did that. Walking into like Barclays Bank and demanding he shut
You needed the Rocky Balboa theme tune on.
Mate, I know, do you know what I mean? I think actually at the time that's probably who I thought I was. That kind of character, like the hero, the anti-hero.
What are you chasing?
Honestly. But actually a lot of... What that did lead me to, though, and this is why whatever kind of choices we make, it does lead to... when we pay attention to it, because not long after that, I did think I probably need some help. I sought the help. I then lent into my creativity and things that I had never explored before. That's what led to music, and that's what led to moving to Noz.
Mate, and there's a few podcasts in that as well.
Yeah, there is, mate.
Something I would like to talk about in this podcast is we've got a mutual friend, Nathan Arnold.
Yes.
Beautiful human, does a lot of this similar work. We're in similar circles. You're doing a podcast now together as well.
We've just recorded like the first. It's not out yet, but it's something that we've been thinking about with another lad, Liam, and all of us have experience within football. Nathan obviously had a great career, like Mansfield, Grimsby, Lincoln.
Scored at Wembley.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's a good goal.
Yeah, I watched that the other day.
Exciting.
Yeah, I know, amazing.
Genuinely gives me a come up every time that happens.
Yeah. No, exactly.
It's only a tapping, Nathan. Don't get too excited.
It's like, oh, that's brutal.
No, I'm joking. I've never scored at Wembley. I don't think I will yet.
There's always time in that.
Yeah.
There isn't in that case, mate. There's still a part of me though that thinks I could make a comeback at the 50.
I keep hold of that, man. Just let that voice be.
Yeah, I'll play with that. But yeah, there's him. There's another lad, Liam, who's an ex-teacher that's kind of, has his own story around and own thoughts about that. And we've all got certain modalities, one of which is kind of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It's about working with the subconscious and mentioned it earlier, limiting beliefs, things like that, phobias, habits. You can work with all that stuff. And we're just thinking about, there's so much change going on in football. It is becoming more open to the whole person rather than just the footballer. So football training generally, certainly in my experience back in the day, was all about like physical fitness, tactics, and that was it.
How to get the best out of you on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly, but in quite crude ways.
Yeah.
Lots of shouting at you and telling you how crap you are if you weren't doing it. Yeah, that was basically it. And punishing you.
Can work.
there is a tiny bit of room
about yourself. It can work.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's something which is still in its infancy, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And I'm feeling myself slowly get drawn back towards football in some capacity because there's an appetite for it. But we'll have to see how it goes. Maybe if I'm on here again in 18 months, I'll be able to tell you more about that.
That'd be ace. And with the idea of working more with people in the football industry then?
Well, for me, my passion and what I would bring to that trio would be working more with the academy players. You know, if 1 in 200 academy player, that's someone that's been through an academy potentially from the age of 7 and hasn't fallen out of it by the time they're 16.
Mm-hmm.
And there is 11,000 lads a year that fall out of that system. Yeah. So in the 30 years since I was in it, that's 330,000, I think. Maybe more, I don't know. Yeah, I've got the maths wrong there. I felt a little part come up then go, you fuck that maths up, but either way.
It's enough.
But
it's enough misguided, lost young people.
What I think, even if, you know, I think, I don't want to misquote the stat, but I know it's either 72 or 80 something, it's high. Of those people, and I'm working with one now actually, they will encounter some kind of clinical mental health problem and self-worth issue because of that. Mm-hmm. So I think because I don't know if you heard Thierry Henry on the Diary of a CEO podcast recently.
No, wow.
Now he's a guy that got to the top of that profession, but the one thing in common about football or any sport, if you embark on that at any kind of meaningful level, is that your career will end at some stage. Mm-hmm. If your identity is I am a footballer, then when you are no longer a footballer, who are you? And Thierry talks about the fact that he wore a character his whole career and that his career was finishing just as the pandemic started, and he literally spent the pandemic crying like a child.
Wow.
And an absolute mess, and not knowing who he was. And that's someone that's hit the top of that profession. So for me, I'm getting increasingly interested in what is the learning going on with these young people that are going through puberty first of all, then adolescence and becoming young men. How do we ensure that they can maintain their self-worth and grow their self-worth and understand who they are as a person in conjunction with developing a career, hopefully in football, but not at the expense of who they are.
We spoke about this more in depth on the last podcast, obviously. Since that podcast, it's been over a year ago now. Do you see change happening? Do you feel there's more support? Because obviously you're in the fabric of it a little bit more.
Yeah, so there's something called player care now, which exists at top level clubs, certainly.
Okay.
So player care is more about the person. You know, it's about access to support if you need it. And I see in academies a lot more of this kind of personal development going on, which is great to see. But I'm too far. Yeah, I don't want to say any more than that because I'm too far away from it to give an informed opinion.
But it is something that you're very interested in pursuing.
Well, I think if anything, just from a lived experience storytelling point of view, like, you know, we joked about that story, but you know, about leaving London. But I've subjected myself to quite a lot of pain that I now know was unnecessary because of identifying so much as a footballer through those 3 stages of growth. So when it didn't happen for me, I didn't know who I was. And how did I deal with that? Well, I didn't. I numbed out from it by drinking, partying, going out.
The whole shebang.
Yeah, the whole shebang. Which, while from a certain perspective wasn't entirely awful, like there was fun in that, but it wasn't really authentic.
No.
So, and long term, it was unsustainable.
Interesting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I think that's true for everyone. And I know you have your own opinions about the education system even. So wider than football, you know, what is the education system here to do?
And that's something you're doing now, right? Clearly working with us, and I'm loving seeing that unfold.
Yeah, I love it.
But you're in schools now?
Yeah, so we mostly, for the 3E space, we mostly work actually with the staff.
Bro.
And what we're
trickle down effect.
Well, what we're trying to do is because actually we don't often look at education from the perspective of the teachers and the staff, all of whom, or I'd like to think most of whom at least, are there because they want to help, they want to have an impact. And very often they've got both hands and a whole range of other things tied behind them in terms of how they do that. but they're also having to operate from a perspective of perfectionism. They certainly can't afford to make any kind of mistakes in a safeguarding way. But also they can't veer from the curriculum. They can't, there's a lot of stress, high levels of stress in that, especially at heads.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is to work with them to normalize their own experience and not think they're failing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of any of that. And to try then, through things like breath work and other techniques, to potentially filter that down into the kids.
Brilliant.
But I am in schools in a different capacity, and I've just started doing that, and that's working with a Nottingham domestic abuse charity called Equation. So I'm going into schools in and around Nottinghamshire, working with year 7 to 9 kids on themes of domestic abuse, like healthy and unhealthy relationships.
Do you feel that it is respected and handled, and it's tricky, especially year 9? I've worked with a lot of year 9, but how do you feel their experience of that is? How do you feel their handling of that can be in that classroom?
I think in some ways they're really open to it.
Yeah.
At that age. But I think there's also a lot of quite long established stereotypes.
Yeah.
Like there's a session we do around gender equality, and we talk about what are the kind of hobbies and professions which you might associate with males as opposed to females, and for males it's always kind of football and all that sort of stuff, but it's never dance particularly or anything like that. Well, why isn't that? What are the kind of things you hear? And you will get homophobia still.
Yeah.
That they have that as learned behaviour, even though from a certain perspective we've moved on an awful lot in the last 2 or 3 generations since I was in school.
I think just from my perspective of going into schools and the pandemic, there was a rise in, we've always been immature, but from going into high schools and the conversations having, they say stuff now where I'm like, that's really a childish way of looking at this. Just through lived experience. And, immaturity and childlike behaviours that bring about those homophobia or whatever with it, that they seem more inclined and willing to share that. Whereas I think we used to say it in the car parks or the playgrounds, but not so much in your face with the teachers and stuff. And
that's really interesting.
Yeah, through my experience.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's literally only been a couple of months for me in those in that environment, so I'm still quite new to it. But yeah, look, I don't know. I'm excited at the moment just to explore all these different ways of working and seeing what sticks and letting go what doesn't. Basically,
do you feel that you have sort of before pigeonholed yourself and sort of tried to niche yourself, and now it just seems from this conversation that you're coaching, it's broadening it all, and you've
I like what you're saying there. I think it's been a bit of both. I think I started quite broad with high sensitivity, but then I've kind of moved into people pleasing from the one-to-one coaching, and that is where that passion is.
Okay.
But I'm also realizing that I can try multiple things at the same time at different levels. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I would not position myself in the core of the 3E space as an expert on domestic abuse.
Sure.
But I'm learning to facilitate the topic and
interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and seeing if that fits. And it's the same with what I do here. I had no knowledge before I came here as to whether I'd be able to have an impact or even successfully run sessions with kids, because I'd not really done it before. So I think what I'm keen to do for me is what sits behind that actually is this idea of exploring what I'm capable of.
Brilliant.
Because for me, coming with that narrative for so long as a man of I'm not good enough, it was quite rare for me to try anything new because I hated the feeling of discomfort that gave me.
How empowering is that though? Just what am I capable of?
Yeah. And to know I'm going to feel discomfort, but that's normal. I don't need to be afraid of my own experience now. Like that. And I really mean it when I say that. Do you know what I mean? And even when we did the last podcast 18 months ago, I probably didn't mean it in quite the same way and with the same level of self-assurance.
So is that sort of just a reframing that you've done within yourself in terms of before this imposter syndrome would come in and then you'd prevent yourself from doing it, but just having that I wonder what I'm capable of here has allowed you to sort of pursue those roles.
That for me is the great example of, so doing the breath work has given me that, because I've been able to bring intentionality to that practice, to let go of and grieve for the footballer that never was, to create a relationship with that teenage version of myself, deal with a load of other things which I've released to create space and energy to empower myself to feel like I'm not carrying these burdens anymore, or at least nowhere to the same extent. So that any discomfort, because we do feel discomfort when we try new things, nerves are actually good, you know, and sometimes we can mistake anxiety and worry and lack of self-belief. So we can mistake what is actually excitement and anticipation for anxiety and limiting beliefs. We can make sense of it in a different way. So that continued self-development of what's happening within me. How do I know if I feel anxious now? I know if I feel anxious now and that I'm really worried about something, if I feel it right in my heart, and if I feel my cheeks begin to flush. If it's excitement and if it's anticipation of doing something new and healthy nerves, I feel it more in my belly.
Okay.
But previous to learning this somatic work over the last 18 months to 2 years, I wouldn't have been able to differentiate that. I'd have made sense of it up here, and I'd have gone to anxiety and worry, and this isn't safe. So, and this is for me why it's so important to develop that relationship with ourselves, because when we can begin to distinguish how our emotions show up in our body, we can soothe ourselves in a way that we can't when we're in our head. And I think when we think about, and I don't like using clinical labels. I don't even like using ADHD as a clinical condition personally. I'm happy to say that I don't. But getting somebody that has a fast working brain to get out of their head is probably the first place I would start if I was working with someone. And I have worked with people that have been diagnosed as ADHD. The problem with diagnosis, and here I say this just from a lived experience point of view and my own experience. When I was diagnosed as having clinical depression, I felt an initial relief. I felt like, okay, how I'm thinking and feeling now makes sense because a doctor has told me this is what I'm suffering from. And there was relief in that, genuinely. However, it also kept me right there, because then it was, well, I can't do anything today because I'm depressed. Doctor says I'm depressed.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people that either have diagnosed ADHD or believe they're ADHD to constantly use it as a reason for stopping doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we have to just be careful, is all I'm saying, is that we don't disempower ourselves by handing our experience or understanding our experience in such a way that it closes doors. That's all. Brilliant. That's all I'm saying.
That's a brilliant... Hey, mate, that's another 20 seconds. I think you've got a good minute out of this.
Bless you.
Would you like to do more podcasts on the bus? Because I'd love to maybe... I think we discussed this before, but pick a topic and do 30, 45 minutes on something, because the way you talk really fills me with a lovely hope. I feel very calm, present and hopeful when you're discussing things. So I'd love every so often. I've got a cool game called Sussed as well. We could
so you do
play.
That with Dan,
it's
didn't
good.
you? Yeah,
it's
I'm here for that.
It's fun. But yeah, maybe we could even look at a topic every time and just think about pondering something.
Yeah, man.
Would you be up for it?
100%. The thing I enjoy the most is not knowing where conversations are going to go, and that's what I love about
that was
your
today
podcast.
That really was today. Yeah, I've been in contrived positions and spots before, and it's not worked in podcasts for me. So yeah, you're the sort of dancing partner I look for, and you're absolutely wonderful. Yeah, I've got to edit them now, so I'm trying to do about... It's an hour and a half. We've done well.
Is that how long we've done?
Yeah, they used to go on for like 2.5, and then I got to a point where I was like, right, if you want to be a dad, do your podcast, but you're going to have to limit it a bit.
It's been a while since I've been able to do 90 minutes, mate.
Oh, dear.
Most of the past 10 years, I was lucky if I could last 15 on the pitch. I always think of things in 90 minutes. When you say 90 minutes, I go straight to football.
Full on footy. Yeah, did you often were you a 90-minute player though? You weren't off on the bench a lot, were you?
No, but even when I was on the pitch for 90 minutes, I was a centre forward, mate, so I was never a 90-minute player.
Working it all out.
I was really lazy, I'll be honest. Like, as a footballer, like, I didn't enjoy constant running.
You knew your role.
Mate,
you know
100%.
the net was.
Yeah, mate, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
That's the money.
I'm still looking at sorting out a 5-a-side, 6-a-side team. So I'll be in touch about that.
Mate, I'm
closing
100%
in.
here for that.
And Jess is up for it too.
Yeah, she's up for it too.
Beautiful. Yeah, I need more footy in my life.
Yeah, yes, it can always have more footy.
Can you let people know where they can? Because I'm sure there's some ears that have got to this point that are going, yeah, Nick's the one.
Yeah, look,
so
Matt,
they want to work with you in any capacity or just talk to you.
Well, firstly, there's loads of ways you can work with us. Me and Jess do free online events, free donation-based stuff at least once a month. So if you connect with the 3E space, which on Instagram is the THE _
3.
The number 3.
Yeah.
E, the letter.
Yeah, I get it.
_ space.
Mate, that's some Sudoku going on there.
Yeah, you have to, like, you know what I mean, explore, energize and empower yourself to get through it. But one word, Nick Edgar coaching. Brilliant. Is mine, and I am Jess Frost is Jess's. But yeah, look, definitely connect and come to an event. Just try it.
Beautiful, man. I'll do my bit. Guys, you've been a part of the Old Farm Bus, Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. I hope you enjoyed that. And remember this, you just got to be nice to one another because you're a beautiful set of buggers. That's all you got to do. Be nice.
Yes.